Recently, a professional Overwatch and Valorant coach by the name of ioStux released a video titled Aim Trainers Make You Worse. I'm here to attempt to debunk this claim since I've put in hundreds of hours in a Kovac, so I might have a fresh perspective on the take. Before we get into anything, I have to preface, I'm not hating on ioStux in any way. I have a huge respect for him and the work that he does, and I'm here to have an honest and productive conversation. I don't want anyone to send any hate his way, all I want is to have a productive conversation about aim trainers. Let's get into it. Relative crosshair placement. He begins his video by talking about relative crosshair placement. Essentially, in FPS games, you're not aiming at the center of a target, you're aiming at the head, or at least you should be. Since hitting the head does more damage, you need to maximize your headshot accuracy, not your overall accuracy. By his perspective, grinding aim trainers will make you a body shot machine, and will give you high overall accuracy, but poor headshot accuracy, since aim trainers incentivize shooting for center mass for higher accuracy and higher scores. He also brings up a point that most popular scenarios in aim trainers have homogeneous, usually spherical targets that encourage aiming at the center of the target. I'd first like to say that I don't believe that aim trainers make you hit less headshots. Unless you're sitting there playing Tile Frenzy and Ascended Tracking in similar scenarios, which I do believe genuinely make you worse at FPS games, you're not going to decrease your headshot percentage. ioStux fail to consider that in Kovacs, the vast majority of highly played scenarios aren't the ones you want to be practicing. A vast majority of good scenarios focus on precision. Something like 1 well 4 targets voltaic has sphere-shaped targets, which are the same shape as a head, and they're very small, which trains your overall precision. If you practice the right scenarios in Kovacs, you won't decrease your headshot percentage. In fact, you'll increase it. Ambidextrous coordination. He next brings up the point of ambidextrous coordination in FPS games. Basically, you have to have some sort of synergy between your left and right hands because you have to utilize both of them in FPS games. This is totally true, I agree. He argues that aim trainers are solely played one-handed, and therefore your coordination between your two hands will falter as a result of playing aim trainers. He argues that the aiming hand unlearns how to communicate with the keyboard hand, which will throw off your movement, and since movement is extremely important in FPS games, this is bad. The example he uses is that if you're in a situation in a real game and you have to flick to an enemy, you would have hit that shot in an aim trainer, but since you're strafing in game, you would miss. He says that the more time you spend in aim trainers, the less synergy you'll have between your two hands, so the more shots you'll miss while strafing. There's a lot of things to cover, so let's go step by step. In aim trainers, you're not always even playing with just the aiming hand. You can if you want, but that's more of a poor utilization of the tool as opposed to the aim trainer making you worse at games. The next point of the aiming hand unlearning how to communicate with a keyboard hand is kind of just wrong. If you practice only in aim trainers and never touch the game itself, this might happen to a small degree, but if you practice in-game and in trainers, this won't be a problem. With a little bit of playtime in-game, you can link up the raw aim you improved in trainers with the rest of the mechanics utilized in FPS games. Essentially, an aim trainer is equivalent to going to the gym. A football player needs to go to the gym so that they're strong enough to adequately play the sport. An aim trainer acts in the same way. You're training your raw aim, which you build in cohesion with the other mechanics in FPS games. It's not like going to the gym is going to make you worse at football since you're training the skills separately. You just bring the skills together after. And the example used of missing a shot in game since you were strafing doesn't really make any sense because if you have a decent amount of playtime in the game, you should be able to build your raw aim from aim trainers into cohesion with the other skills in the real game. Unless you picked up the game 6 minutes ago, you shouldn't have an issue with applying your aim while strafing. More time spent in aim trainers just correlates with better raw aim. It might not improve your aiming while strafing that much if you don't play strafing scenarios, but it certainly won't make it worse since practicing skills separately then bringing it together later is fine. Simplified visual stimuli. He lastly argues that since aim trainers have vastly less visual stimuli, tracking a tiny ball in an aim trainer doesn't equal tracking a tiny target in a stimuli explosion like an FPS game. Once again, practicing your raw aim, then building that into cohesion with your other skills in-game is how practice is usually done. In an instrument, for example, you would never say, don't practice scales because when you're playing an actual song in a band, there's going to be more stimuli, therefore practicing scales is useless. That doesn't make any sense. Why pros use aim trainers? He concludes his points by explaining why pros use aim trainers. He argues that pro players or just highly experienced players can use aim trainers since they've already built up the synergy between their two hands to the point where it can't be broken by aim training. He says that their crosshair placement is second nature, and center mass aiming can't break that. He says that since they have thousands of hours in game, they're used to the game's visual stimuli and the brain knows how to filter it. And lastly, aim trainers offer an increased challenge that a real game might not be able to replicate for them. Since most of us still have a challenge in ranked matches, we don't need aim trainers for the increased difficulty. First off, I believe that players with even 60 or so hours in game will have sufficient synergy between their two hands to the point where using aim trainers won't break any synergy that they have between their two hands. I also believe that crosshair placement is second nature to basically everyone who's put in a decent amount of time into any FPS game and takes it seriously and has adapted a mindset of learning and improving. Once again, his point about visual stimuli just doesn't apply, And lastly, the increased challenge is beneficial to everyone. When you're playing an actual match or even just deathmatch, you're not practicing your raw aim as efficiently as you could be in aim trainers. Obviously, you have to play both deathmatch and actual matches to improve all of the skills utilized in FPS games, but in order to improve raw aim trainers are the best way to go about that. Sure, regular players can be challenged by normal matches, but that doesn't mean that raw aim can't be trained more effectively in aim trainers. Just deathmatch lol. He ends the video by saying that you should just deathmatch instead of using aim trainers. Now, I'll preface, I don't play Overwatch, and I don't think his videos necessarily even targeted directly towards Overwatch players, as it can probably apply to any competitive FPS game. But practicing in deathmatch won't improve your raw aim as effectively as practicing in aim trainers. In deathmatch, you will also utilize strafe aiming and similar hitboxes to ones that you'll shoot in real games, but because of the increased difficulty in aim trainers, it's not as effective as training raw aim in aim trainers. In order to improve every part of your gameplay, you have to practice in both aim trainers and in deathmatch and in game. Diversified practice is extremely important since there are so many skills that have to come together in order to perform well in FPS games. Aim trainers aren't bad, you just use them wrong. A vast majority of people don't utilize aim trainers properly. In Kovacs, there's almost 10,000 scenarios at the time of writing. There's most likely a scenario that will help you with a certain part of your aiming. Sure, if someone sits there playing Tile Frenzy all day, they're probably just going to get worse at the game. But that's not the fault of the aim trainer, that's the fault of the person using it. Aim trainers are dangerously unutilized, and that's led to a misconception that they're not very beneficial. It's not the fault of aim trainers that the vast majority of people don't benefit from them, it's just that they're not used properly. Conclusion. Aim trainers can only be beneficial when used properly and when combined with actually playing the game. I don't believe that ioStux considered how aim trainers can be used before making his video, since most of his claims are really only valid if the person aim training is just playing Tile Frenzy or something of the sort. Once again, I'm not hating on ioStux at all, he's an incredibly smart dude and definitely knows what he's talking about, but fail to consider a few small elements of aim training. If by any strange chance you're watching this ioStux, I have a huge respect for your content, and you've helped me improve with a lot of your videos. If you'd like to check me out on Twitch, I'll leave it down in the description as well as my Discord to stay up to date with what I'm doing. If you like this video and you want to stay up to date with any of my future projects, hit subscribe. Don't hit the bell though, we want less notifications in our lives, and leave a like to get this video in people's algorithms. Thank you for watching.